A few months ago, Anson Mount approached this channel. He told me that there were certain things I was saying that he didn't believe were true. And we had a discussion. Well, about the same time, another actor, but from Discovery, approached me. And now I can tell you what they've been saying. Welcome to the Attack and Pulse podcast, your place for sci-fi news, rumour and debate.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.
So Anson Mount actually approached me after I released that video saying that A Strange New World Season 3 was being delayed in part because of political reasons. That basically Paramount bosses were concerned that Star Trek was going to drop and that it could have actually irritated Donald Trump and the administration. That they were at a delicate stage of actually negotiating for the Skydance deal to take over Paramount. They were already getting pressure on things like 60 Minutes and other things, and it was felt by bosses that actually they needed to be very certain that Star Trek was not going to rock the boat any further. I'm actually told that there were scenes cut from Strange New Worlds, directed by Paramount, and the other scenes were edited or changed. Now, when I first dropped that video, I did mistakenly say that there'd been reshoots. That was my error. Basically, I was told that there'd been changes to the episodes, and I just thought that meant reshoots. So that was my mistake. The source emailed me immediately and corrected me. Anson Mount also confirmed that there were no reshoots done. Talking to Anson Mount, though, it became actually quite clear to me that he didn't want that story to be true, rather than knowing for a fact that it wasn't. He said things like, look, Akiva Goldsman wouldn't allow that. And I said, look, normally, I agree, but this was not a normal situation. There are reasons why I know this to be fact that I can't share, but it's one of those things that I know isn't a rumour. It's fact that lawyers, etc., on the Paramount side did review all of the episodes of Star Trek Season 3 and made changes. So, at the time, another actor from Discovery approached me, and they were basically telling me how they actually felt about Star Trek moving forwards. Now, I can't share this person's name at the moment, but they have said that basically if Secret Hideout don't get a new deal, they may be willing to come and have an interview and share some of their views. But at the moment, it's almost funny, they're kind of hoping to get a role on Academy, so they don't want me to share. But what I can tell you is that obviously they're heavily involved in Star Trek. They have enjoyed Star Trek their entire lives, and they wanted to share that what they feel is happening at the moment with Star Trek isn't Star Trek. They've actually been able to tell me that there is frustration with other actors as well, particularly actors that come in and out of the show, not necessarily the regulars, that the scripts are, let's say, dodgy, that actually some of the storylines are confusing. The one actor actually said to me that one of the things that frustrated him the most was that sort of the science that came along with a lot of the episodes just didn't make sense. And even somebody that doesn't sort of know Star Trek and know science particularly were confused by some of the plot lines. They've also said, though, that they felt that, and this is particularly that they actually enjoyed this element of the acting, as it were, but didn't enjoy and were confused by some of the storylines in that it seemed to be more about relationships, particularly on Discovery, than actually Star Trek. Now, the fact that an actor has come forward and said this, and said basically that it's not even that this was particularly bad, it's just that it was really confusing and never felt like Star Trek to them, is really echoing what an awful lot of fans have been saying. I actually love speaking to this person. They really give me really good insights, even though they don't know a lot about what's going on behind the scenes at Star Trek. This person has been able to sort of talk to me about what was going on with Section 31 and confirmed a few bits and bobs about there being some negativity around the project before it was actually released. They've also been able to sort of tell me about a few little disagreements and things that were actually on the set of Discovery, which I'm not going to share because it wouldn't be appropriate. But there were times and there were straight up arguments apparently on set about some of the direction of the show. Traditionally, back in the day, Star Trek would have its writers and things on the floor when they were filming, and if something didn't quite feel right, they could jig it. They could do something a bit different with it. That was not the case for Discovery. They basically had what's on the paper, you will do, and writers were nowhere to be seen. That was frustrating for this actor. They've said, look, there are other examples of Star Trek where they have been able to sort of play around with the scripts, but not on the show they worked on. They were very much, on paper, say your damn line. And that was it. The only interpretation they were really allowed was how the line was delivered. And that's about it. That seems to me like a very rigid way of doing any sort of television show. It does seem to the way, though, that a lot of streaming shows are done, that they're written months in advance, that they're then signed off by the studio, and then they're filmed verbatim. That seems to me to really stifle the creative juices of actually doing a show like this, because something that appears on paper, for me, just might not work in the reality of being on set. Or it just doesn't sound right coming out of the actor's mouth, which is something actually that this actor sort of talked about, that it wasn't just that, you know, the line would maybe be a bit awkward, it just didn't fit either the scenario or the person saying it. We all know that sometimes somebody can say something and it just sounds weird coming out of their mouth because they're a big burly guy or something. They say something a bit, I don't know, a bit soft or something. It just doesn't sound right. That's just one terrible example, but hopefully you sort of get what I'm meaning by that. One of the things, though, the actor also did say was that Alex Kurtzman was on set an awful lot, and particularly for the early seasons of Discovery, but then they barely ever saw him after that. That actually the directors would come and go and always try to sort of force their view on Discovery and make changes and things. And it seemed like the directors had way too much power in this. And again, a lot of the time they didn't seem to really understand the genre. And one of the things they also said was that the actors had virtually no input into their part and were never given that opportunity. That is, again, something that I don't think used to happen. I know Brent Spiner, Patrick Stewart, people like this had input back into the writers. They spoke to the writers. There was a relationship at times there that actually Brent Spiner could come to a part and say, look, I don't think Data would say that, or I don't think this would happen. Can we tweak it? And don't get me wrong, sometimes the writers told him to bugger off, but other times they would actually be willing to listen. There was none of that with Discovery. The actor also said that the Klingons freaked them out, and that was generally hated on set. Apparently also by the people playing the Klingons, because apparently those suits, and to be fair, they look it, were incredibly uncomfortable to wear. The main thing was, though, that this actor basically said was, particularly for Discovery Season 1, they knew there was going to be a backlash. They knew from day one, and they openly talked about it. When the actors are telling you something's not right, it's not right. So hopefully, look, I look forward to the day where this actor will appear in a video with myself, which would be very cool to get some of this insight from the horse's mouth. This is, a lot of the time, their opinion, which is obviously going to have a perspective to it, and other people on set may have thought of things very differently. But it does seem that there were people on the ground filming, doing this, that knew this didn't feel like Star Trek and didn't like it because of it. But guys, get into the comments and tell me what you think. Is this a surprise? Is this a shock, really? This actor even approached me. They literally did it after seeing that Anson Mount had. Is it a shame, really, that they won't talk openly now? But it is their career. It is like paying the mortgage that's at risk, so, I don't really blame them. I actually think that they were quite polite about some of the things they were saying, and I think they could have gone a lot further. But it seemed to me that it was actually more the process of the acting and the storylines that were bugging them rather than some of the things that bug us about Star Trek. Get into the comments though and tell me exactly what you think. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. It really helps us out and you'll never miss any of our new videos. Also, you can join me on Patreon. There's a link in the description where I can talk a little bit more openly about some of these stories and sometimes tell you stuff I can't tell you on YouTube. Go check that out. As always, please stay safe and I'll see you next time.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.